Yes, but no.
Okay.
Are you going to cut around cameras at all? Do I need to?
I don't know. Is the monitor on?
Yeah.
If we were, I'd probably want to move this one here. So you could do
That's a great question.
a nice. Well, Billy, how old are the kids?
College.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
Do you want to look at other cameras? Would that help instead of just staring at one? It might be more comfortable for you.
Yeah, I could.
Just be like, if you can like look and then
Yeah.
All right. I'll
Sure. Or I would just say go to like stick on this one because with it on the monitor, I'm gonna be kind of
seeing yourself.
seeing or wanting to look anyway. But
Okay. Yeah, we widen this out a little bit.
I'm just saying that it's in his contract to be on camera whenever. Yeah.
You want anything to do with this?
I don't think we need a third.
Go to the overhead. Yeah. No, that's what I wanted. I wasn't joking with that. I was getting. Yeah, still playing Sanctuary. Yeah, still playing Skyrim. It's stuff coming out. There's not really anything new to talk about. Just keep bringing up
It's because it's a good game.
like some kind of actual piece of shit.
It's because Trackmania is the real game of the year.
Seeding the game of the year, so you can like have a trigger word.
Exactly.
Be like,
I'm creating sleeper cells of maniacs.
raccoon sandwiches. Trackmania is a good game.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hmm. No, I mean as long as you see the account. Okay. Okay. Just got a lecture going on for a little bit here, so. Okay. Yeah, so it might be another 10 minutes or something, or 20 minutes or something like that, tops. Okay. Should I talk back to it? Do you want to test me coming through? All right. Okay. I really think the way that she says hello is still my favorite thing about the test call. It's I want to meet that lady. I want to meet the Skype call lady. There, I said it. Turn that down a little bit. Okay. I could hear her out of both ears. Is that coming out of the SA out here, or is that just you have it loud in there and I'm just hearing the control room? Okay. This just in, GoDaddy raising its prices 7%. Must need that money for elephant killing or whatever.
Professionals.
Right. Yeah. Every time you play that TNT music, all I can think of is the Duke Nukem version of it, with all those samples,
Dink.
all the balls of steel samples over it.
What reminds you of that?
It was playing it earlier, but I think it might have been before you showed up. They were playing it over them.
The original is still the best.
Yeah,
I'll make a dubstep version of it.
yeah.
I was actually just looking up yesterday. Reason and wobble bass.
It's yeah. I mean, you can just hook up a knob to like oscillate.
Yeah. It's like an LFO knob.
Yeah, yeah. And you just adjust the LFO. Make it go wow 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 wow.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, it's not hard.
But,
I did it, but then all the drivers on my machine, I don't know what's going on. Like my Ozone doesn't register. It hooks up, but FL Studio doesn't see it anymore. It just registers an error when I try and give it control.
and you haven't changed it?
No, I mean, I've installed drivers and some stuff, but nothing related directly to audio. So, like all my ASIO drivers don't work anymore. And it's just everything
Weird.
broke all at once. So I don't know if it's a.
Sucks.
Totally. I mean, I can still use all that stuff, but I mean, I can still use the program. I just can't. Yeah, no, my interface is dead. So, yeah, I was thinking about removing everything yet again and reinstalling everything.
That's pain in the ass. But you have all your plugins, they work?
Yeah, I mean, I never really installed all of them again after my last format. There was just a while there that I was formatting so frequently and then changing machines that I just never, yeah. So it would get to a point where if there was a track that I needed to get to and open up, I would just look at what it was reporting as missing, install that stuff,
And then
and just go from
slowly
there.
build up.
Yeah. But then there are just like multiple versions of Sample Tank that have different names, so different tracks want different versions of it.
they're not like compatible with each other.
Not quite, like they're close, but
I have to reinstall Reason. PC's in the living room, I have to put it on my laptop.
I thought about grabbing a copy of Reason and trying to check it out, but I think it's just one of those things where I'm so, like, workflow is so ingrained with that stuff that. But I don't know, I probably need to change up something because it's getting kind of bored with.
I think Reason. I like Reason.
What's the
more.
reason why you like
It's
Reason?
It's
Yeah.
Reason for the season.
Yeah.
Really. It's a season for Reason. Reason got better now that they've added record that comes with Reason. I think they still
Oh,
have
okay,
and
yeah.
you could do actual line inputs like guitar and bass
Right.
and stuff like that into Reason.
Yeah.
So, I don't have to open Pro Tools and do anything like
Yeah.
that. So it's all
FL Studio will do recording, but I never use it for that.
but it'll do actual analog recording?
Yeah. I just never learned how it worked. It was just the way it uses mixer tracks for recording tracks,
Yeah.
and just the way they built it into it just never made a lot of sense to me. So, so I just never really learned how to use it that well. So I actually
I heard really good things about FL Studio.
I mean, yeah, especially if you are making like dubstep, like half the.
Do you still do like beat slicing and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a bunch of plugins and stuff that do like really easy glitching and quantizing and just like, you know, like kind of whatever you want to do, they've got presets set up to do a lot of really ridiculous stuff. So, yeah. But
There's an added auto tuner, which is fun.
yeah.
And easy. I would bet if there's a new version of Reason, it'll just have a wobble bass preset. I like watching every time there's an update, they add like rack things that are like of what is the
Current music,
hip,
yeah.
what the kids are
Right.
into.
For FL Studio, they just put out tutorial videos
Of just how to do
of
it.
just like, here's how you do this.
Okay.
So for a while, it was like, here's the sidechain compression tutorial, so you can make all the tracks go. Wah, 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 wah.
That's fun. Just had it set up during my break. I probably wouldn't have used it.
Yeah.
Usually I wind up getting that stuff all set up and then recording about 4 bars and then looping it.
Yep.
And being like, all right. That's cool.
Done. This song's
That's
done.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Can I loop this? I could loop this about 7 more times, and then on the 5th time I'll drop the bass line.
Right.
out.
Yeah.
That's a song.
Yeah, but I still build the instrumentals there, and then drop that out to GarageBand, record all of the vocals and stuff there,
And then bounce it back.
and then take those tracks back. So I'm actually going from my PC to my laptop and then back,
Oh, man.
which is goofy, but whatever. It's all on the same network. It doesn't actually take that long to do. The only catch is that for whatever reason, I mean, there's just enough latency that like 0 in GarageBand is not actually lining up right. So I can't just drop the tracks in and have them line up. I actually have to manually adjust every single thing. But I've gotten really good at that. So it's actually not that. That is a 45-second process to line up 7 tracks.
Latency, so it's okay.
And there's like latency adjustments
Yeah.
in a lot of that stuff,
Yeah.
but I kept trying to adjust it and never really found the right way. I don't know if it's just like the USB interface that I'm using for the mic, if that's introducing it or where it's kind of coming from. Because for a while I was recording in Audacity instead.
Is that better?
It's open source, kind of multi-track. Remember Cool Edit Pro
Yeah.
or Adobe Audition?
I used Audacity to record that podcast with my dad.
Oh,
Yeah. It worked. I mean, we recorded for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
It worked all right.
yeah. It's pretty much fine. And it does all the multi-track stuff, multi-track recording.
Yeah,
and-
it seems okay. I was afraid it was just going to crash.
Yeah. But then recording on that, it was off even more.
Oh, the latency?
Yeah. So, like I tried adjusting for it and all that, and never really found a good solution to just make it line up.
That stuff can be maddening, especially with like instrumental stuff.
Right.
Like if you're trying to you're monitoring like your guitar or something.
Oh, right,
through
and
that
that's
track
coming
well,
through.
and
Yeah.
then it, like you hit it, and then it's like even just a split second later.
Right, yeah.
You're hearing it like hit the track. There's a changing the buffer size. Is
Right.
hard for me for that stuff.
Yeah.
Hey Daniel, how's it going? Yo. What's going over here all early? I was just warming up for the day. Just running through Jeff's vocal warm-ups.
Ho 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 ho.
Opinion does it pretty good. Just objective, just gonna be objective here? Yeah, exactly. That sounds really good. I'm gonna check in on the back.
All right.
See if anything's blown out.
Have they at least said it's still today? No.
No, I think the last date was still that message from Major Nelson.
Right.
Larry.
L Dog.
Larry Nelson.
L's.
He wasn't so busy popping on L's.
All right, here we go. Yeah. Hello. Huh. Yeah, sure. You don't see me. No, you should be able to hit play. It should be. There will be an ad. Hello. All right, great. Yeah, sure. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. I've been covering the video game industry for, since, let's say, the mid-'90s. But when I was still in high school, I started going and seeing, trade shows and stuff like that, going to CES and seeing Super Nintendo games before they were out, which, when you are 16 and 17, is thrilling. And, kind of fell into that ever since. And, here we are today. I'm now the founder and editor-in-chief of GiantBomb.com, which is a website about video games. Are you there? Did we lose you? Okay. Okay, well that makes it easy then. Great. My favorite thing about the site is that we're able to really get closer to the people that are making games than we have in the past. I think that's something that's only been possible relatively recently, kind of as the medium has evolved. People are interested in it on that kind of deeper level. And that's been something that's been hard to do in the past. People just want to know, like, where are the screenshots of the wrestling games? And it's been nice to be able to kind of evolve past that and come up with new ways to cover video games. And it's been exciting, having gone through a decade or so of kind of covering them in a very kind of standard manner of trying to get as many wrestling screenshots as possible. To be able to break away from that and try something new has been awesome. Well, hello. Hi. Yeah, I can hear you. This is a 3-camera shoot. That's my other favorite thing about this site. Is it's a pretty. I mean, we got a studio. We built this studio, and now I can just kind of like look over here and. Sure. Well, I think that for me the thing that that we've kind of built this site around is kind of us to some extent. So I think more so than some of the other publications out there, we're able to really kind of do what we need to do and be as truthful as possible. And you know what? There are going to be some companies that aren't okay with that. There will be some major publishers that will come through and say like, well, we're not going to send you a copy of our next game, and that's fine. That's well within their rights. We don't have to get free games from people to do our job. And basically, I treat it like we're ready, kind of at the drop of a hat, to basically be completely separate from that entire industry. If they decided tomorrow that they never wanted to send us another game again, if they never wanted to invite us to any other preview event again, like we've kind of built this site in such a way that we could make the adjustment. We go out and buy all our games. The reviews would be later, and that would make them somewhat less useful. But basically, we've kind of built our content around the notion that we don't need them as much as some other outlets do. I've certainly been in position in a position where that has been that pressure has been applied, and even in those cases, you kind of have to be able to walk away from the ad dollars or like whatever that stuff. If you're letting that stuff get to you and influence the way you cover games, you probably shouldn't be covering games. Well, I guess I just got a fourth. I have 3 arcade machines and 1 pinball machine. I have the pinball machine. It's impossible to keep those things going, and it's really sad because the parts for a lot of this stuff, even the arcade machines, are really hard to find now. So there's just a dedicated community of people out there that are trying to keep those machines in working order and kind of keep that history alive. But that's hard to do, and I don't have the skills required to really repair a pinball machine, so it's in kind of a constant state of disarray. I've got a missile command machine that was left in a dump that pulled out and people thought it was broken, kind of cleaned it up, got it working again. I've got an NFL Blitz 99 cabinet that I won in a tournament by being very good at NFL Blitz. That is in pristine shape because it just rolled off the factory line. And then I just recently bought a Warlords cocktail machine for the office, to cocktail. It's a 4-player kind of tabletop game, and we've been kind of playing that for money around the office, which I think is illegal. So forget I said that last part. I think that independent development is actually like a really interesting way to get kind of into the video game industry, and it's the same across a lot of different disciplines. Is that the tools are out there now for people to just start doing it. You know, it's tempting to want to go get all this training and go learn, you know, Unreal Engine and go that route. But I mean, you can go get Unity very easily. There are other, you know, toolkits out there that you can just kind of get into. And if you can find a crew of like-minded individuals, start building a game right now. And you know, there's some just really exciting things happening on the student gaming front. You know, the IGF is doing a great job of kind of showcasing independent games and getting a lot of that stuff out there. So, you know, if you have that drive, if you have that hustle immediately, like there's no reason to not just get going, like even in your spare time. And that's been kind of one of the more exciting developments over the last handful of years is seeing kind of the rise of the small team again. And it started with stuff like Xbox Live Arcade and the PlayStation Network, but now, you know, that's kind of migrated back to the PC, which is probably where it belongs, because you know, there's you know, there are more open platforms and you have a lot more options for development there. So I guess like my advice to anything, whether it's, you know, writing about games, making games, like, you know, writing music, you know, just like cross discipline, is just start doing it. And that's not to say replace your education by just starting to do it. Supplement your education by just starting to do it and hone your craft as you go along. And yeah, like I said, it's been really exciting to see some of that stuff come in and come up big. You know, small teams have been making some really excellent stuff. Yeah, it's, you know, it's the tragic thing about Sega is that the Sega of today is not the Sega of the Dreamcast era. You know, a lot of the great minds of Sega rolled out of there, you know, kind of over the years, kind of following the Dreamcast demise, and you know, they've done Choo Choo Rocket for Android and iPad and stuff like that, and it doesn't quite feel the same. You know, but my favorite Dreamcast game, I don't know. I'm tempted just to say Tokyo Bus Guide. The Dreamcast, in a lot of ways, was one of the last great import systems for just total nonsense coming out of Japan. It was back when you could import games and they were weird and great and tragic all at once, and that was really exciting. But you know, if I'm actually being serious, like you know, Samba de Amigo, Alien Front Online, maybe. You know, there are a handful of great Dreamcast games. Capcom versus SNK, you know, those are the Dreamcast, of course, some fantastic fighting games. Rez was pretty good on the Dreamcast, but you know, the PS2 had the trance vibrator attachment, so it's kind of automatically better there. You know, the DDR on the Dreamcast was pretty good, but yeah, Samba de Amigo. There's my answer. Samba de Amigo with the maracas. The Wii U seemed really interesting. I mean, you know, they had playable kind of prototypes for Wii U games at E3 this year, so we kind of got a chance to see some of that stuff. And on a tech front, it's interesting. You know, taking the controller, and it's a pretty standard controller, just separated. Remember there was that GameCube keyboard for Phantasy Star Online that had a GameCube controller on the sides and a keyboard in the middle. This is like that, but with a touch screen. And there's some neat things that they can do with kind of holding that up to the screen and using it almost like. So someone can make a really good silent scope game with this, because it'd be like, here's the scope view, here's not. Here's the scope view, here's not. And that has some potential, but a lot of the games that were showing off almost seemed like they were taking the ideas that they had with things like Pac-Man Versus and Four Swords, where you had different players getting different levels of information, because you had some people with a DS that had their own private screen, and you had someone looking at kind of the shared screen. And a lot of the demos they put out were based around that, and I expect there to be some kind of mini game collection at launch that kind of collects all those use cases into one thing and says, like, here's what this is capable of. And then all the third parties will just kind of port stuff to it and make kind of bad use of the screen for at least the first year. The part where I think it kind of breaks for me is that they said, like, they're not going to sell the controller separately, and that you might only be able to hook one of those controllers up to a system. And I don't know. I don't know how far you can go with that technology. For a full generation, if that's a trick that works for 5 years, or if that's something that's kind of a stopgap, interesting upgrade from what the Wii did, that is more powerful to get kind of third parties interested in making games again. But then, eventually Microsoft and Sony is going to come out and say, like, well, here's the stuff that's truly more powerful, and then you're left in a situation where developers are porting down to the Wii U, and I think that creates a really interesting quandary for them, where this could be a Dreamcast style situation where they've kind of taken a half step instead of a full step. But despite the 3DS not being my favorite thing in the world right now, I'm still not in a position where I want to quite just bet against Nintendo. So I expect that, as before, they will come up with killer first-party games, and then third parties will kind of flounder along and do some stuff here and there that's interesting. But by and large, Nintendo will make games for Nintendo's system. Oh, great, thanks. For me, getting into video games was something that was kind of brought on by my parents. We started going to arcades and stuff. I remember having to be held up, like I wasn't tall enough to play like a space. They made a Space Invaders pinball machine, and I remember I think we went to, like, there was an arcade at Fisherman's Wharf here in San Francisco, and we went there and played some of that. And then on the weekends, my dad and I would go to an arcade, and we'd play some of the cooperative multiplayer stuff, and it kind of became our weekend thing. And then from there, home systems and getting into, like, the Fairchild Channel F and Atari computers and stuff like that. It just kind of became everything that I was about at that point, like pretty early on. But I think it was probably like the summer of like '84 or so. I think I spent that entire summer just playing Lode Runner and not going outside. And I think that was the earliest moment where I was like, okay, this is all I want to do. Not coincidentally, that was the year that I also kind of went from the kind of wiry bike riding kid to kind of developing a bit of a gut, let's say. So maybe some more balance would have helped. But it got me here, so I don't know. I'll take it. No, I think GTA 5 is going to come out next year. Rockstar doesn't typically announce its games that far in advance, and I don't think we're going to see new hardware from Microsoft and Sony until 2013. So I think that we'll see GTA 5 on this generation of hardware, which is weird because you think about the kind of like GTA 3 being a series of games, like they did kind of a GTA 3 trilogy. more or less. You would almost expect them to just put out another game with a different subtitle, like a Vice City or San Andreas. But GTA 4 sold well, and I think that when they can come out and say this is Grand Theft Auto 5 and kind of push that as like it's 5, it's a full leap forward, I think that probably does something for them on an interest level side, on a marketing side or something. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this game was scheduled to be called something other than Grand Theft Auto 5, like a Grand Theft Auto Los Santos or something like that. There's been rumors to that effect, in fact. So yeah, but this will be an Xbox 360 PS3 game, and not a launch game for the next hardware. That's my gut feeling. Oh man, like a favorite console. I mean, there's been so many that have been so special, but I think that the stuff's always going to be the stuff that you grew up with. I think in a lot of cases, nostalgia is going to really weigh in heavily on that, and that's something that's pretty important to remember. Kind of as you move forward, that you're always going to have those childhood memories. It's the reason why I'm not interested in any Mario Kart game past the first one, because that was the one that I had a good time played with friends. It's the reason why people still remember GoldenEye fondly, is because they were in college when it came out on the N64, and they just sat around in a dorm room playing it all the time. So I'd probably say like the Super Nintendo is a fantastic console, but I think I like the Genesis more. But that kind of 16-bit era was really special in a lot of ways. I think the Atari 2600 is a really fascinating machine with just like so many crazy games, and just seeing what developers were doing with blocks and trying to turn those into full game experiences and stuff like that. I think is really kind of cool from a historical perspective now. But I like that kind of late model sprite-based stuff. The 16-bit era is probably my wheelhouse. And favorite genre. Man, I don't know. It changes every few years. I think it's hard to nail down. I think kind of all time it probably end up being fighting games. It's not something that I'm the best in the world at. Never claimed to be, but it's a lot of great competitive moments happen with the fighting genre. But then first-person shooters are great. A lot of the shooter stuff, I end up reviewing a lot of that because I end up enjoying playing a lot of that stuff too. So yeah, probably something between those two. More substantial Kinect games. Yeah, it's tricky. I think that's like the minigame collection has become the equivalent of motion game, because it's real easy to hold a drink in one hand and go like this with the other or something like that. I'm not even sure why that really happened. It just sort of became kind of the de facto like easy third-party game. You know what happened? Because Carnival Games sold like X million number of copies on the Wii. And everyone thinks like if we just pump out a minigame collection, eventually we will hit onto this formula and it'll work out for us too. So that's probably why you see so many of those party games, because they're quick and easy, and that's fine. But with Microsoft releasing the Kinect tools for PC and kind of letting people hack around with that, and of course being some open source alternatives to their official drivers. There have been some people that have kind of made some interesting steps in kind of using that Kinect technology for something other than like bad sports games or whatever. And I think that it has a lot of potential, kind of going further and further down that road. I think that they haven't quite nailed it right, even with the dashboard update that they're supposed to be pushing out today, but I guess has been delayed. The interface stuff of just navigating and using voice to control stuff. I think there's a lot of potential with that. But I also think that that technology has to kind of go through one more generation before you're going to be able to really use it for anything more substantial than that. It needs its kind of Wii Motion Plus moment of upgrading to something better. And I think that that'll be, they will obviously, they've sold so many of these things. It's been a success for them. The next Xbox platform will have to include some sort of Kinect style technology. And whatever upgrades they make from there in terms of like fidelity of motion tracking and that sort of stuff, I think that's when you'll see developers maybe make a push to do something cool with it. Until then, yeah, expect a lot of like bowling motions and jumping jacks and dancing and crotch punching and all that sort of stuff. Right, yeah. I think Metacritic is a fine site for consumers. I think that there's really nothing wrong with its stated purpose of giving people a lot of reviews to read. And I think that people should do research before they buy games because games are expensive. $60 is a lot to ask for something that in some cases you might only play for 5 hours. So I think going into those purchases as informed as possible is smart, and like reading a batch of reviews or kind of just getting a general feeling is fine. I think kind of what it means from an industry perspective and the way the industry uses that number to kind of dictate how many copies of the game end up on shelves, or how much marketing money they're going to put behind it, or bonuses paid to developers. I think some of that stuff starts to get a little insidious, and I don't think it's quite I don't think it's as accurate of an indicator of sales success as some publishers seem to want to use it for. But I actually heard from a developer at a smaller company recently that said that they actually really like Metacritic because they're in a position where they've made games that haven't made their investment back. They've made games that have lost money. So they have to go pitch their game ideas to publishers to try and get deals. And if they had a track record that was nothing but games that hadn't made their money back, it would be damn near impossible for them to make games. But because they're able to say, actually, but all of our games were total critics' darlings and we all got 80s and 90s and whatever down the road, that becomes their leverage point that they can use to get funding and make some pretty fantastic games that sadly don't appeal to a huge number of people. So it can be used for good and evil. As for user reviews, I think that it's hard because kind of one of the things we tell people is like if you want to get practice writing reviews, just start writing them. There are plenty of places to post them and all that stuff. But viral marketing companies and sometimes the developers of the games themselves, recently, so the developers of Jurassic Park, the game, got caught kind of out there rating their own stuff and writing reviews for their own stuff, which is a dumb thing to do. It's harder and harder to trust those numbers. And I think that as long as people kind of consider the source, you never know who's going on Amazon and writing reviews of a product. And it's safe to assume that, if it's something where you can just rate it and leave, everyone who worked on it's just going to go hit the highest button they can. Or if they're feeling really bitter about something, the second highest number or something like that. So I think they do skew that stuff a bit, but it probably all balances out in the end. And probably doesn't cause that big of a problem, but it is kind of gross when you catch people kind of with their hand in the cookie jar reviewing their own game. It just makes them look less than confident in the quality of their product, that they're out there kind of trying to do everything they can to make it work for them. So, it's kind of hard to put too much stock in individual user reviews unless you're part of a community and you build up kind of a layer of trust with the users of that community. So oh, well, I know that guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to these types of games, so I can take his reviews at face value and then kind of include them as part of the process of building information and going out and making that purchase. So. User reviews are not totally useless, but they require maybe a little bit more research and a little bit more involvement than some people are willing to give. So I recommend you just go to giantbomb.com, and we review some games and talk about a lot of games, and you can see all that stuff. All these other websites, whatever. As for Game of the Year, it's funny. Like someone mentioned bonus round earlier. I think I pretty much just come out and say like, man, Skyrim's real good, and Skyrim is really good. It's kind of broken right now, but I don't know. I'm still kind of rolling it around in my head what my personal Game of the Year is, and we are totally behind on our own voting and picks and stuff here. So later today, we're going to kind of sit down and figure out what our categories are even going to be for our Game of the Year stuff. But Saints Row is surprisingly awesome. Saints Row the Third. Surprisingly great this year, and that's I think any discussion about Game of the Year has to include that. I think you got to try and look back over the course of the entire year, and Dead Space 2 was pretty popular when it came out, and I really had a good time with that. So I kind of need to revisit that and see if it kind of holds in the kind of company of these other games. Portal 2, pretty solid. But I don't know that it'd be my pick. Yeah, I don't know. So, there's a lot of thinking and discussing and arguing that we have to do over here before we nail that stuff down. And we'll be actually rolling out our awards between Christmas and New Year's, like that week, like the 26th through the 30th or whatever. So come back to the site and we'll have hours of angry podcasts of us yelling at each other about, who the best new character is and stuff like that. To be honest, we got this site off the ground because we kind of had a legacy spanning back a previous decade, and I was able to actually go on television, go onto G4, and announce the name of the site on XPlay the day that we announced it. And that certainly helped. There were a lot of people interested in kind of what my next move was going to be, so we kind of cheated in that sense. But I think that when it comes to doing a blog, like doing any kind of content and getting it out there, like you need to be dependable. You need to have something that keeps people coming back and makes people want to return day after day, and building up that base of an audience that's going to continue to come back to your site and kind of go along with you on the ride, as it were, is pretty key. You want to establish that firm base, and then from there, you'll get your people to kind of surf in and out every couple of days, and that kind of builds your kind of churn, your top layer or whatever. And as long as you keep at it, kind of all websites naturally sort of grow. Of course, the dirty, unfortunate secret is that search engine rankings kind of matter. And that's something that even, we've been around for 4 years or something now. And, we're doing okay on that front. But, some of these sites have been around for, since the mid-90s. And those pages are old. And Google really likes old pages. So if you go type in game name review, you're going to get like 3 websites right there, 1, 2, 3 a lot of the time. So it's really hard right now to kind of start a site and count on like search engine optimization stuff the same way that a lot of other websites do. because it's such a kind of well-worn territory. But when it comes to building an audience, yeah, I would say just you need to find kind of your approach to covering games, kind of stick to that approach, and then once you kind of build something of a base, kind of take those people along for a ride. Like, okay, you like this, you like what we do here. Hopefully you'll trust us when we kind of come out here and do this other thing over here. And then maybe you'll come along for the ride with this over here. And hopefully you'll kind of bring in new people on each and every step. And it just sort of snowballs from there. But yeah, it can be hard fought to get a thing going for sure. We were lucky to be able to cut some corners on that step. I think that, yeah, like the focus of gaming right now is relatively narrow in the grand scheme of things. When you compare it to other mediums, movies, books, all that, music, a lot of these things have been around a lot longer and have kind of crossed those lines. We're still in that phase where our parents, and in a lot of cases our parents' parents, didn't grow up with video games, so they still are afraid of them. It's Elvis Presley on Ed Sullivan, not being shown below the waist to some people, and they still think games are murder simulators and all that sort of stuff. And there are a lot of shocking things coming out of other territories. I mean, there's a huge scene of adult games out in Japan that when you show them to people, their reaction is something like, "We need to ban all this right now." But that's those attitudes have changed even over the last they change every day in a lot of cases, because the older generations continue to get older as we grow up and as you grow up. Like, you're probably not going to hold those same prejudices, and eventually gaming's just going to be thought of as another medium, and this process we're going through right now, or the process we were going through the 90s with Mortal Kombat, and kind of taking that forward into kind of the ESRB rating system and that sort of stuff. We're going to look back on that the same way that we look back on Jack Thompson's previous efforts trying to ban the 2 Live Crew. It'll just seem silly. Just like, why would you censor this stuff? It's a form of expression. Obviously, it's an art form. Like, let's just keep it moving forward. And other parts of the world are a little bit ahead of us on some of that, because society is different, cultures are different. But I think that when it comes to crossing some of those taboos, sexuality, religion, that sort of stuff, I think that those are areas where some segment of the audience is already really interested in kind of breaching those topics and kind of moving forward, but it's not going to be a mainstream success just yet. That's going to be something that I don't even want to put a date on it, but like 10, 15 years or something like that before we could deal with sex in a mature way without it suddenly appearing as a news story. It's like, look at this sick filth. Your kids, they're trying to steal your kids' brains with video games, and all the boogeyman tactics. All that stuff will eventually fall away, and everything will work out fine in the end. It's just a matter of kind of waiting it out. One and two are fantastic. I mean, the music in Streets of Rage 2 is some of the best game music of all time. The synth, the FM synth that pumped out of a Genesis was super capable of making amazing music. Yuzo Koshiro, one of the greatest game composers around of that era or any era, just did fantastic stuff with the music. The beat 'em up, like that genre, hasn't really aged particularly well. Those games are relatively easy these days because we've all gotten used to so many more complicated games out there that stuff just seems a little basic. But those games certainly stand up. Or two more than one. One looks kind of ghetto now, and in 2 they added some moves that made it better. I mean, really the tragedy of Streets of Rage is 3, because they went and made this huge cartridge and charged all this money for it, and it was just dumb. All their additions, the extra characters, just kind of detracted from the experience. The marketing campaign was trying to compare it to Street Fighter 2, and it's like they're not even close to being the same thing. Like, you're out of your mind. And and again, it's kind of the tragedy of Sega is that you get the impression that there's no one left internally to kind of champion Streets of Rage in a way that would lead to the creation of a new Streets of Rage game. They've tried a couple of times now to get a new game off the ground, and it just kind of gets killed or peters around and dies out. And from what I've heard about those games that they have worked on, it's probably for the best that they never saw the light of day, because you thought Streets of Rage 3 was bad. They would have killed it off forever with what they were working on before. But it'd be nice to, I don't know, it'd be nice to see them actually kind of give it another shot. Okay. Do I think that games are going to just... I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Oh. No, I don't think that we're going in the direction of completely getting rid of controllers. I mean, there's certainly going to be a place for that style of game, the motion game, and whether it is a motion controller or you are the controller, kind of remains to be seen. But I think that there are too many people around right now that have grown up using kind of basic controllers and all that sort of stuff that like that sort of thing. I like that sort of thing. I suspect that a lot of you would agree that this is never going to be as precise as just hitting a button. The button is right there. There's nothing wrong with this button. And maybe there's some way to combine the two in some games, and there's some developers going down that road. I don't know if that'll work out or not, but I don't think it'll ever go away. I think that they'll continue to diverge, and we'll see both. But until motion can get the precision of a regular controller down, which I'm not convinced it can do anytime soon, buttons and joypads and all that sort of stuff will always have a place. Thanks.